Moving to the South, the Atlanta Falcons. The greatest draft class of this past year, the Atlanta Falcons. Sign a guy to a 4-year deal in the offseason, and you draft his replacement at 108, who will replace him when on his 30th birthday. Not the quarterback who you signed's 30th birthday, but the guy you drafted's 30th birthday. So Arthur was blank in his brain when they decided to make those decisions.
Oh no, that was
there.
the GM. There was that.
Oh, I know.
Fight. Yeah.
Imagine explaining to your boss, "Hey, here's the dumb decision I made, but let me draw it out for you." Okay, quarterback 1, maybe Kirk Cousins. Who knows? We don't know. They draft a guy in the first round in the top 10. Quarterback 2, maybe Michael Penix Jr. Quarterback 38 currently. Kirk Cousins going quarterback 18 according to Underdog. Bijan Robinson, excuse me. RB2, pretty good, pretty high. Tyler Algier, presumably, knock on wood, not gonna see anything this year. RB48, we'll see. And I did not mention new head coach Raheem Morris, new offense, Zach Robinson, former Rams passing game coordinator. So it's going to be very similar to the Rams system. Drake London, wide receiver 10. I think that's the highest he's been, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of ADP, by far. Yeah. Darnell Mooney, steep drop, wide receiver 68. But I like that Ryan has him highlighted, because I also love Darnell Mooney. And Rondale Moore, wide receiver 92. Solid weapons for Kirk Cousins to throw to. And not to mention, knock on wood, Kyle Pitts, if they can finally figure out how to use him. He's still the tight end 6. That's crazy. After
is crazy.
Like, you might as well just pin that to his name, because I feel like that's his ADP every year since his rookie.
Yes. And everyone's hanging on to, but he's going to be good.
That athletic profile.
Listen, you're drafting him at a ceiling at best at this point. So let's dive into it. Moody, you have Drake London, the highest ADP he's ever had. Yeah. I've loved Drake London since he's come out.
To that USC game.
I went to one USC game and I saw that man drop a defensive back on a quick slant. I was like, you did that at 6'4"? Okay, you're going to be good.
I said he's 6'4", so you know I love him.
Yeah. And USC's track record of receivers as of late has been money. So I love USC receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster withstanding. Drake London, wide receiver 10. He has the best quarterback he's had. He has a really good, presumably very good offensive system.
Yes.
This is the year, right? This has to be the year.
Yeah, I'm like the stage is set for London to have like a breakout season. And I ended up deliberately posting about this on X. About Drake London, with some footage that was tied to it, of catching a pass from Kirk Cousins. And like the stage is set for it. He's a third-year wide receiver. You mentioned the coaching change. You mentioned a lot of stuff I'm going to cover, so I won't dive too deep into it. So you got Arthur Smith, who's out, who's gone. The run-heavy scheme is no more. But you got to think about context is important. Like his first 2 seasons, London, he was limited to in year 1, like around 72 receptions, a little bit under 900 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns. Didn't really improve much the next year. He had like 69 receptions, a little bit over 900 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. But one thing I love about London, though, love his college tape, love what he's done at the NFL level when utilized. He has been impressive when he's gotten targets, when he has the football in his hands. And one thing that's crazy to me is that he's yet to finish a season better than 40th among wide receivers in routes and only has 14 career end zone targets to his name. You mentioned Zach Robinson.
Good Lord.
That checks out so aggressively for the Falcons. It checks out so well.
I know, right?
Continue.
I'm just like, you got Zach Robinson here. You mentioned, hey, from the Rams. I'm like, he's on board. You got Kirk Cousins under center. I'm like, this is a guy that's entering his physical prime at 23 years old. It's really elite upside here. And what gets me in the mock drafts we've done so far is that, at ESPN is that people are kind of looking at, I'll close on this, that London is like a wide receiver 2. I think that's how he's being viewed, but you got to think there's room for so much more. So I am in on London this year and really this entire Falcons offense. So I'll stop there.
Are we at all worried wide receiver 10 might be, we're drafting him at a ceiling? Is that at all a worry?
That's my worry, I'm going to say. I mean, the last 2 years, his first 2 years in the league, he's had on the dot 6.88 targets per game. Now, I understand that's very much indicative of Arthur Smith and how he galaxy brains everything to a point where it just mucks everything up. But he also went from a 28% target share his rookie year to a 20% target share last year. And that's a huge drop. But when you look at this system that he's coming into with Zach Robinson, yes, he's a first-time play caller. It's an extension of Sean McVay, an extension of Shanahan. We've seen what Kevin O'Connell has kind of done in Minnesota with Justin Jefferson. We all like Darnell Mooney. We think he's a very skilled guy, but he's not the type of target share earner that someone like a Drake London can be. How many targets do we realistically think that Drake London can see? Like, what kind of percentage? Kirk Cousins has never had an issue throwing over 600 times. You give this guy a 25% target share, you could be sitting over 150 targets.
Well, you hit that on the nose that Kirk Cousins also doesn't have a problem throwing to one guy over and over again, nor does this offense have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Ryan, I'll flip it to you because you have Mooney. I almost said Moody. It's very close.
Exactly.
You have Mooney highlighted, and wide receiver 68. We've loved him since he come out, and we're in literally he's free territory.
Well, this is a guy who only 26 years old. He'll turn 27 during the season. We've seen him play very fast on the field. We've seen 1,000-yard season out of him on a very bad Chicago Bears offense. And as much as I agree with both of these guys, Drake London, that guy, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, but there's still a lot of passing attempts to go around. And this is an offense that Zach Robinson wasn't necessarily running the offense when we saw Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods. We've seen multiple wide receivers, Cooper Kupp. Now Zach Robinson, well, no, he was there last year. So Zach Robinson knows Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. There's always been an and in the Rams offense. And it's not a situation where, like, when we were talking about the Titans, I had to say Will Levis isn't Joe Burrow. Kirk Cousins is Matt Stafford. I'm A-okay with that offense being translated into Kirk Cousins' hands. And it's going to work out really well for Drake London. It's likely to work out really well for Kyle Pitts. But one of these two wide receivers, Mooney or Moore, is going to do well. They're both completely free. I've just seen a lot more out of Mooney that had us salivating 2 years ago. And now, no offense to Justin Fields, he's with a real quarterback. So I'm interested to see where it could end up.
Anybody else?
You're going to see a lot more 11 personnel with this team. And that obviously is going to open up a lot of room for Darnell Mooney. I'm really curious to see if they end up targeting Kyle Pitts more like as a receiver. Because, I mean, we've seen high target volumes for Tyler Higbee out in Los Angeles, right? Like, they're not afraid to throw to the tight end.
Not at all.
They've also had 3 wide receivers be really good. We've had 2 wide receivers in this system be really good. Jordan Addison had over 100 targets last year, I believe. Justin Jefferson averaged 10 targets a game in only playing 10 games. So, like, there's plenty of room to throw around if that's what they want to do is throw the football. I mean, we've seen all the talk that, you know, Bijan is going to be used like CMC, right? Well, if that happens, what's his target share look like? He had almost a 17% target share last year. So, like, it's going to be really interesting, the distribution of targets. Like, do they keep it centralized on Pitts, on London, on Bijan? Or does Darnell Mooney actually start earning some of these targets as, like, you know, the free agent acquisition that comes in that the new offensive coordinator wants to actually get involved?
To your point with Tyler Higbee, it was 2 years ago, 2022, where he had that big year. And while he was a extreme disappointment, I hate to even bring his name up, but Allen Robinson still was seeing, 5 to 7 targets per game. He didn't do anything with them. That was a very, very bad year and not the example I want to throw out when I'm trying to talk up Darnell Mooney. But even the year before that, where Tyler Higbee first started to emerge, we saw, I think it was Van Jefferson almost have 90 targets that season. You're hoping that Mooney's going to do more with these targets. But I think 90 to even 100 targets, depending on Bijan's involvement, it's within the realm.
Well, going to Bijan, RB2 in underdog ADP, and according to Gator, RB2 on the Falcons again this year, which, hey, what? Who says no? Who says no when you think about it, right? Who says no?
Me.
That guy. Josh Bijan, you were high on him coming out. I mean, who wasn't, in all honesty?
Yeah, Josh.
Right.
But like,
You really found.
I was the only one that was high on Bijan, guys.
You
But he
dug
was-
deep and found this rare gem in the draft.
but
Diamond in
he was
the rough.
he was aggressively high on Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, I think I had him as my RB3 as a rookie.
Yes,
honestly.
you were
I think I took him,
insanely high.
I think I took him highest in Scott Fishbowl of anyone last year.
Yeah, you were insanely high on him. He's presumably going to not have any competition in that backfield. So
Well, I mean, if you look at that, like he had a 41% rush share last year. Like for you spend an 8th overall pick on a running back in 2023 when running backs are like so devalued that we're screaming that, oh my God, CMC's making 19 million a year when bum ass wide receiver 3s are pulling 15 million a year. Like, really? And you only give him a 41% rush share. Like, that's unfathomable to me. But through all of that, he still averaged 4.6 yards per carry and damn near hit 1,000 yards. Only had 4 rushing touchdowns. Not great. But then you look back at his last 2 years in college, he had 29 combined rushing touchdowns. There's plenty of touchdown upside. So even if they only use him as like an 80% of Christian McCaffrey, he's going to ball out in this offense this year.
Mhm.
Tyler Algier, great story. 5th round pick, comes in, has 1,000 yards. We saw the same thing with Jordan Howard. He fell off the map really quickly. Tyler Algier, it was nice knowing you. That's really all I have to say about that. But there, to me, he of any running back has the greatest opportunity to surpass and dethrone Christian McCaffrey as the RB1 in fantasy this year.
Yes, I gotta chime in on this because it's ironic because originally my plan was to highlight Bijan Robinson, but I noticed that you got to him before, and I was like, "That's fine."
You could have double dipped. I would have ceded to you and picked somebody else, Moody.
No, I'm just like I knew I would have a chance to chime in because I love Drake London, so I would definitely take the opportunity. But I think everything that you mentioned about Bijan like is spot on. I love that you mentioned like Christian McCaffrey. Like I don't know if you would call this like a bold take or anything like that, but I could see Bijan Robinson finishing the season with more targets than Christian McCaffrey like this year. Like he could easily have like 85 or more targets, which makes it really fascinating. Because I was thinking back to last year, like with his excellent receiving production. Like this is a running back who was top 5 amongst running backs in routes, targets, yards, and touchdowns. Then you just think about all these factors we've talked about, having Kirk Cousins under center, new coaching staff, just fresher perspective. I'm like, he could easily finish as a top 3 fantasy running back. And would it surprise anyone here if he did finish as the RB1 this year? Just putting that out there.
I don't think it would. I mean, and it's not unfathomable to say that. He had more targets last year than Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
it's interesting. The one guy ahead of him is obviously Christian McCaffrey in running back rankings. Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
I mean, CMC's earned it. Like, I mean, you're not going to take that away from him.
I'm just glad nobody's drafting Justin Jefferson over Christian McCaffrey this year.
So think about this. Like you mentioned with the ADP, I don't want to go stay too long on this, but it's like, okay, so CMC number 1, right? I'm just thinking about ESPN's with our ADP. So I think CMC is number 1. I want to say at number 2, you may have like either Breece Hall or like CeeDee Lamb. But I think Bijan's like at 4 or like at 5. So you just got to think people, casual drafters, right? Like if you've got like the 104 or the 105 and like Bijan is sitting there.
Fastest pick ever.
I'm like, you got to pull the trigger there, right, guys?
I'm pretty sure I drafted him last year at the 105. So, yeah, I'm definitely pulling it this year.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
What Moody is explaining has been my experience. I just did a best ball draft today where CeeDee Lamb was the first pick. And I totally get it. Ahead of Christian McCaffrey. Yep, absolutely. There are people who are just super bought in.
Look, I don't hate CeeDee Lamb. I love CeeDee Lamb. I now have to hate CeeDee Lamb because people are idiotically taking
this is
him
what
over
happens
Christian
every
McCaffrey.
year.
Crazy.
The wide receiver the year before, they want to take them over Christian McCaffrey, plain and simple, over the RB1. And every year it seemingly comes back to bite you. So maybe stop doing it.
Correct.
Because it's typically a new wide receiver one every year.
Every
anyway.
year,
Like,
exactly.
How about a new wide receiver or running back? There's been no RB1 repeat since the Vietnam War. So if you want to,
But McCaffrey always belongs there.
yes, McCaffrey always
Yeah.
belongs there.
Yeah.
But if you want to buy into Bijan, he wasn't the RB1 last year.
Fair.
It was barely an RB1 period last year.
Correct. Correct. I just
Have fun in Pittsburgh, Arthur Smith. You
Yeah.
jackass.
Jalen Warren, baby. So this has nothing to do with Devon Achane is RB7. Really? That kind of feels aggressive.
Well,
Yeah,
Right,
feels-
it's definitely aggressive, but you look at his efficiency metrics.
I was
he
gonna say, a
literally
lot of
broke
drafts right now are-
analytics.
a lot of drafts right now are best ball, and he is a perfect
Sure,
best
yeah.
ball
No,
runner.
I just sat there. I'm like, that's a little aggressive.
Yeah.
Moving into bets. Kirk Cousins to lead the NFL in passing yards, says Ryan Weisse. Plus 1,300. Those are pretty good odds.
It's excellent odds. Kirk Cousins would have led the NFL in passing.
So he was
yards
on
last year
track,
based on
right?
his pace. Yeah.
Yeah.
The number one quarterback in the NFL last year, Tua Tagovailoa, 46-24. In 8 games, Kirk Cousins, first of all, was the 24th most passing yards, 23-31. Would have had 46-62 in 16 games. He could have skipped game 17 and still led the NFL in passing.
Wait, Tua led the NFL in passing yards last year?
46-24.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the dumbest stat ever known to
So,
mankind.
yeah.
Kirk Cousins easily breaks that.
So again, you don't know that it's always going to be this number, but for those odds for a guy who could have done it last year healthy, it's worth a couple bucks. Obviously, you want to hear more about his health, but those odds are going to go down as the news about his health goes up. So
$10 to win 130? Why not?
why not?
Why not? Josh, you have Kirk Cousins over 27.5 passing touchdowns. It's plus 110 on ESPN Bet. I mean, as Ryan said, if he's healthy, that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I just found it really interesting that was the only prop of this category that was plus money. Everything else was, like minus 100, minus 110, whatever, either the over or the under. This was the only one plus money. Excluding last year, which I'm fairly certain that he probably hits that mark last year. He's only missed that mark once since 2018. So, this would have been easily, he clears 28 easy. He's got all the weapons in Atlanta set up to be able to do this. There's no reason not to take the over on that.
7-10 last year. Moody has him over 9.5 wins this year, minus 145.
Yeah, you got Kirk Cousins in town, taking over the reins, quarterback. I think you look at this Atlanta team, I would say they're really hungry. They actually have a reliable quarterback that can, we're hoping, right? They can maximize the talents of Drake London. We talked about Kyle Pitts. And one thing about Cousins, he's averaged 271 passing yards per game during these last 3 seasons with the Vikings. You got Raheem Morris that's there. They beefed up the defense during the draft. Things are really looking up for this team. And just to kind of put a bow on it, you factor in one of the league's easiest schedules. And it's really clear to me that this Falcons team, I think it's really positioned to exceed expectations this year. So love over 9.5 wins.
The good news is they only have 2 Monday night games. So, it's 15-2 right there, right?
So they have a Sunday night game. It's true.